Hello and welcome to another Reaconteur video, and in today's video I will be ranking every legendary weapon based on how well made, fun to use, and balanced they are, as well as how fun they are to fight. Make sure to subscribe since only about 20% of the people watching this right now are actually subscribed. I am also currently live on Twitch, so drop into that after this video. Starting in our bottom spot at number 24 is the Rosen's Hellflame. This weapon is absolutely awful in every way conceivable and imaginable. It's not particularly creative, the crit was at one point the most annoying thing in the game, but is now just unusable trash. There's no special obtainment for it being a Diluvian and Hell mode drop. It's a rifle, which is already just really annoying because nobody wants to use rifles. Except the Storm's Eye, but that's just because you want to use a Storm Legendary. And it's not even fun to use because of how bad the Rosen's Hellflame is. The crit used to be the entire point of why you would use it, and then they nerfed it, and now the weapon is just kind of dog shit. I can't curse this early in the video, god damn it. Genuinely, this weapon is bottom tier trash in every way. And at number 23 is going to be the Fractine. This weapon just isn't good. It scales off of intelligence, which is the most underutilized stat in the game. It's kind of sad too, because as far as weapons go, the Fractine is one of the more unique ones, having its shattered state, making it like two different acting weapons in one, and it's actually kind of cool. Sadly, that's all this weapon has going for it. It's pretty weak, and you can tell the devs forgot about it because literally nobody uses it. Along with that, its obtainment method sucks because they're all Void Sea events, only dropping from the Dread Serpent, Void Sea Chest, Semblance, and Moon's Eyrie. None of those I want to do because I don't want to go anywhere near those areas. And who wants to fight the Dread Serpent? That boss sucks. I actually almost forgot this weapon existed while writing this video script, so yeah, I forgot to put this in here. But yeah, this weapon is just not good. It's not even particularly fun to use. Like, its unique mechanic could be fun if the weapon were at least half decent, but it's just not worth it. At the number 22 spot is the Isly's Pyrekeeper. This is actually a good weapon, but it's placing low for a few reasons. First of all, the Pyrekeeper was the weapon that really started the trend of too many criticals. This weapon has 5 crits, which is kind of insane if not underutilized for combos and mix-ups. Secondly, the weapon has no unique obtainment, making it lame and boring to get. Legendary weapons should feel rewarding to get if they're going to add this many. So, you know, I excuse the older legendaries from this because they're old, right? And they were initially extremely rare, so it didn't matter that there was no unique obtainment because the obtainment was done through a handful of bosses. But adding new legendaries just for them to not be rare or have unique obtainment is lame. The Pyrekeeper also started the trend of the devs adding too many legendaries to the game, which is why there's 24 of them in this video. Next at the number 21 spot is the Imperator's Edge. This weapon in its prime was really stupid, doing a ton of damage and scaling off the stat that makes you tankier along with talents that make you tankier. Lots of builds are glass cannons. The Imperator's Edge builds were just cannons. It did a lot of damage, it was fast, the crit was faster and did a lot more damage, and these builds were just not fun to fight. But the worst part is they weren't even fun to use because they were literally just like crit attunementless mantra spam. They weren't even fun to use. Like, people literally just ran these with the sole purpose of farming elo. Alright, now the weapon itself is actually a pretty nice design, but that doesn't mean much when it's taken from a God of War weapon almost directly. And its obtainment is also lame because it can only be gotten through fishing or the Primadon boss fight. Two things I don't particularly want to do, and nothing unique for the weapon. It would have been cool if they added like a hive quest for this, where there was like maybe a hive leader and you had to gain their trust, kind of like the way you do to get Legion Kata. Or, sorry, why am I talking about hive? I meant Legion. But you could do something like the Legion Kata quest, and once you get the Legion Kata quest done with the rep, then you could do like another quest where you fight like, I don't know, like a trainer or some sort, and he gives you the spear if you beat him. That'd be cool, and it's pretty simple to do. But Iron Requiem is going to be our number 20, and it's just not good. Oh my god, this weapon sucks. Honestly, it might deserve to be lower on this list. It's a unique drop from the Ceramide Hollow, so they literally added this weapon for the desperate Ironsing players wanting a non-heavy legendary, and then they added it to the Ceramide Hollow to get people to actually farm that dungeon for a couple of days, but, you know, nobody does because this thing sucks. And this weapon kind of has the same problem that most guns in Deepwoken do. They aren't fun, and they kind of just suck too. Pistols in this game are not very fun to use, and it's kind of just a problem the entire weapon category for pistols needs to be reworked in order to fix because they all just suck. At number 19 is the Kehrsteiger. This weapon is sadly trash. Like, it's a really cool concept, being a heavy greatsword and a railgun that's, I guess, powered off of emotions because it scales off charisma for some reason, but it's just as impractical as it sounds. The crit is not very good, with a 15-second cooldown on top of that, and then the weapon is just obtainable in Layer 2, so I guess it was added to be the Layer 2 legendary drop, but it's not exactly special obtainment. At the very least, it has a cool design, and the idea behind it is cool, but who thought making the railgun scale off charisma was a good idea? Katana. It just feels like they had a cool idea for a weapon and assigned it to the only stat that didn't have a legendary yet. Oh wait, that's exactly what they had to have done to make a railgun scale off the stat based on charming people. At number 18 is the Storm's Eye, and I want to put this lower, but I literally couldn't find a way to put it lower, but I hate it so bad. The weapon isn't bad, but it's one of the lamest weapons used in one of the lamest builds in the game in its prime. The worst case I ever saw was a lightning build using the Storm's Eye, and he literally randomly brought out Shadow Vortex to try and suck me into the storm. Not one Shadow Monster that entire fight, but then he just had Shadow Vortex. As a whole, this weapon is just really annoying and unfun to play against, and it's kind of just like one of the weapons that promotes people to hold S. The crit is a bit unique, but it's literally just lightning assault, so it's not that unique. And people just really love to hold S with this weapon, and if you're using it, you're probably holding S, so you're probably not having the most fun with it either. It's one of the better legendaries on this list, but being forced to use a rifle because you want a Thunder legendary is kind of the worst thing that could ever happen to you. I hope they just get like a medium or a light or dude, just anything that isn't a gun. Just above the Storm's Eye is the Lumen Splitter at 17. Is it policy for Lumen Splitter users to be annoying? Why do they all insist on spamming the crit? I get it's good, but god, you guys all love spamming ISO into the crit, don't you? I've seen this on 3 different builds. Regardless, the Lumen Splitter really isn't anything special. It's a heavy weapon with a really long crit, and the design is alright. I don't like it that much. Like, it's kinda ugly, and oh, you know what? Yeah, it's actually taken from One Piece, sorry. So, I mean, the design isn't even original, and even if it was original, it's not that good. Aside from number 16, we have the Gaunts of Enmity and the Chorus of Agonies. These are 2 unique Heart of Enmity drops, and good god, they are ugly. I know it's kind of hard to design weapons and armor around the Enforcer and Enmity, but man, these are some of the ugliest weapons in the game, especially the Chorus of Agonies. Now, I don't mind when weapons are only obtainable from a specific boss, right? The obtainment here isn't that bad. The weapons are themed around Enmity and therefore drop from the Heart of Enmity. My only problem is when a weapon is dropped from like 6 loot pools and 2 of them are Hell Mode and Diluvian. And I especially hate when they add a random legendary without reason. They just put them in random loot pools. But a new boss is good reason for legendaries, so I will excuse these from that. With that being said, these things are ugly and they're not particularly amazing, so they're not going to be ranking that high. They're just kind of middle of the list. At 15, we have the Soul Thorn. This weapon is the epitome of a slop legendary. It barely even scales off of intelligence, so lots of people don't even run it that much on it for the little people that do still use it. But this weapon, first of all, is fucking ugly. It looks like a comb you ran against a wall until it turned into a prison shiv. Surprisingly, it only has 2 crits, but this weapon was given birth to the most copy and paste clone build since Shattered Katana Azure Flames. And the worst part is, it's not even very fun. It plays like a regular sword with a weird auto-track and crit, and everyone's seen the no-go Soulthorn build, and everyone's long tired of it, even though it's not even meta anymore. At 14 is going to be the Eye of Malice. This weapon actually has a pretty cool design, and apparently when it dropped it was super broken, but as it is, it's not that great. The weapon is unique in the fact that it is one of the only legendaries with only 1 scaling type, and this is a new pattern among the newer legendaries like the Enmity weapons, because this is a legendary weapon, but it doesn't scale off of any stats other than your weapon stats, so it's interchangeable for any melee medium build. This weapon isn't really that interesting other than its orange mark effect with its crits, and honestly it kind of just feels a little bit lazy. Like, I get it drops from the Doom of Caranthil and it's supposed to be like you made this out of his spine and it's a cool design, but the weapon itself feels like they focus more on the physical design rather than how it plays. At 13 we have the Flareblade Kamas. These aren't very good from any standard, but they're more unique and usable than most of the previous weapons without being miserably boring from either side. The Storm's Eye, for example, isn't bad, but rifles are the most boring weapon to use and fight in my opinion. The Flarebloods are kind of like the opposite side of that, where they suck, but they're at least kind of fun. They do have a few issues, though. First of all, they scale off intelligence. Similarly to the Fractalion, that alone makes this weapon way less viable than it could be. Secondly, they don't even make up for it with damage. They do 29.6 damage at max, which for daggers is good, but nobody's gonna run intelligence for this weapon, so they're only really ran on support builds anyway. The crit, while cool, is also kind of impractical, being better at range, and while you can use it close up, it's really easy to parry at range or close up, so it's not even like worth it most of the time. This weapon is in the same boat as the Kearsaiger, where they kind of just made a weapon and gave it a stat to scale off of while making it match the theme of where it's found, this time being the Chaser. At 12, we have the Light's Final Toll. I'm ranking this a bit high because I'm biased and personally have used this weapon for a long time, but realistically it's not very good anymore. It is fun to use though. First of all, the devs single-handedly ruined every build running this weapon when they added light scaling to it, because I was not running light with this weapon. My build is now unusable and I still have it. Regardless, this weapon is actually one of the better designed ones, which makes sense because it was made by a fan artist and not the developers. And the unique crits, while worse than the normal fist crits most of the time, are actually pretty cool. This weapon is just kind of over-nerfed at this point, which is a bit sad because this game has a lot of reverse power creep issues where the devs will nerf a weapon like the Fractine or Light's Final Toll and then just forget about it. At 11, we have the Wraithclaw, and this weapon has no right to be this high, but honestly, it's really fun to use. I hate fighting it. Fan the Flames Gale builds are obnoxious to fight against, but they're actually really fun to use, and I hate to admit that. And their obtainment method is at least unique, having a special enemy you need to fight, so it's better than like Diluvian mechanism loot pools, which most things before this point are found in. The Deep Spindle will be next at our number 10 spot. This weapon is only found from the Understrand or Weird Trader, which, going to the Understrand. Now, I don't particularly like this weapon. When it was last used, it had a weird issue of just hitting people through rolls and parries despite the dodge particles playing or the parry sound. So I never had a good experience fighting this weapon when it was viable in the meta because it was buggy. The design also isn't that good. It looks like an umbrella. It's just kind of not bad enough for me to put below this, but it's also just not good enough for me to put higher than this from any aspect. It's just a mid weapon that looks like an umbrella. Next up, we have the Crypt Blade showing up in our number 9 spot. This weapon is sick. The design is really cool. It used to just be the Darksteel Greatsword model with fog on it, but ever since it's remodeled, the detailing is really nice. I, however, don't like playing against it. Most Crypt Blade builds now are just mage builds, which is already annoying, but when you have mage builds running a weapon that does almost 60 damage, and swing speed doesn't matter because mage builds only press M1 when they need Ether, most Crypt Blade builds are really annoying to fight against. Honestly, it could go lower than this, but I just really like the weapon, and it's one of the original legendaries, so I can't hate on it that much. In the number 8 spot, we have the Hailbreaker. This weapon is an exclusive drop from the Coldheart Fortinbras, but can occasionally be rarely found in Death's Chest. This weapon is actually kind of cool. Its designs in 3 stages are nice, the 3rd stage is kind of ugly, but as a whole it isn't bad. The weapon itself is sadly not the most viable, but it is a well-designed weapon as a whole, and I think the devs put a lot of work into this one. The Grand Sudaruska is my preferred ice legendary, coming in at our number 7 spot, right above the Hailbreaker. This weapon's lore kind of gives it an edge over the Hailbreaker, and the fact that it talks and is sentient is super cool because this is the first and only sentient weapon in the game right now, which I think is just really cool. Like, I like having the axe talk to me when I'm killing people. It makes me feel schizo. The weapon itself is actually also good and can be used in PvE pretty well. It's not the best for PvE, but it's viable, and PvE viability isn't that major because, like, you know, most of your stuff is going to come from your 60% damage armor kit. And besides, the crit is an AoE, so it's got to be at least usable in PvE, right? The Imperial Staff is just kind of mid. This is going to be landing in our number 6 spot, but this is just another legendary added for a stat with no real unique obtainment or aesthetic, but at least this one's inspired by some Wukong instead of just taken from a Project Moon game. There's not a whole lot to say about this, and yeah, it's in our number 6 spot, but it's only in our number 6 spot for being slightly more creative and better than everything before it, especially because everything before the Flareblade Kamas is just outright bad. So I mean, it's like 10 spots of just weapons that aren't good, so being number 6 really doesn't mean too much here. Next will be the Curved Blade of Winds, which will be our highest ranking old legendary at the number 5 spot. This weapon has also had 3 redesigns, which I think is the most in the game. It's actually pretty cool, with its stance being either a single sword or dual wielding 2 identical swords, and although I never liked the multiple crit legendaries, it's actually executed really well here, with the stance change being a possible telegraph for which crit can come out, and allowing you who are fighting the person using this weapon to prepare for either the ranged or normal crit in response to a stance change, instead of having to wonder if they're going to crouch and input M1 and E and X all at the same time with a macro to send out their devastating 18th hit crit that can't be dodged or parried past the 2nd and 3rd hits. Look, this weapon is actually really good, or well designed, but it is actually pretty low in damage for a medium weapon, only dealing 30.6 at max, which is comparable to many light weapons. Now, Suffocation does carry it, and the aftercut adding an extra 10% damage is helpful, but even then it's still on the lower end for mediums, having like 34 damage or 33.6 or something like that. But it is a very well designed weapon, so it's going to be in our number 5 spot. The Ignition Deep Crusher is taking their 4th spot. This weapon is actually a really cool design and one of my favorites. It has 2 forms: a blunt damaging hammer, which applies metal rods faster, and a sword that does bleed damage and does more overall damage, allowing you to change your playstyle priority and win condition for either optimal damage or optimal iron rod stacks, depending on how you want to play at this time. And that is a good weapon design with trade-offs and balancing for each, of the 2 forms that it has. The only way it would be better is if it had a unique obtainment method, but it's kind of just available pretty much everywhere in the depths in Ceramide Hollow. This is a really well designed weapon, and I do like it, but I kind of just wish the obtainment wasn't so boring. Like, you guys could have done something with the Ignition Union and had it be like a cool little quest, but you guys didn't. Next up will be all 3 of the Maestro Evangard weapons. I'm keeping them all tied in number 3, but as far as design goes, Purple Cloud is the best, Pale Briar is the second and Cerulean Thread is last, but they're all good. The Maestro fight was one of the best updates they dropped at the time, and making a secret boss fight and letting the community discover it randomly was really cool. So the obtainment method is top tier for all of these. They also made these weapons great at different things. The Purple Cloud is a good PvP weapon, the Pale Briar is a good PvE weapon, and the Cerulean Thread is about as usable as the average dagger. These weapons are all cool designs though, and I do quite like them. The Blood Fowler is in our number 2 spot. This weapon was actually well implemented and designed, being the Blood Legendary. The quest is simple, but it makes sense from a lore perspective, being obtained from the Ministry and all that. And I also think it's funny how Volu just steals it from you if you talk to him and gives you nothing in return. It's kind of just like a funny lore addition that makes sense because yeah, the Ministry likes using people's labor unfairly. It's like 90% of what they do. The Blood Fowler itself also isn't a bad weapon. The design is a bit simple, but it makes sense, and the weapon being a big Odachi is cool. I think this is probably the best implementation of a legendary weapon that they've done since our next weapon. And my favorite legendary in the game is Pleadsky's Inferno. Its design is cool, and I like how it looks and glows. The weapon itself has a great unique quest and a unique boss fight tied to the quest added for the addition of the weapon, which is really cool. It also synergizes with the Simmerbloom Diadem, which gives you a matching accessory, as well as the potential trade-off of having, you know, better stats with stuff like the Bloodforged Crown, or the synergy via a single accessory, which, you know, is actually a choice you'd have to make for your build, which is pretty cool. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe. Shoutouts to Green, Brick, Pickle, Bacon, Goobka, Highcard, and Drizzy Drake Fan. I love you all. Have an amazing day, and goodbye.